Howdy y'all, this is the Harm Reduction Report. We are going to cut right now to the audio of this video I just made, which we're about to debate what the title ought to be and some other things about this video, but it's the stigma video we made with the city. So we'll play the audio and then we'll chat about it for a while. So here it is.
I'd gotten a DUI, and it was my second DUI. I was like, oh my god, this is horrible. I gotta stop drinking. So I stopped drinking for like maybe a month and a half, and then I was back to drinking again.
My friends were riding home from a party. 3 of them were drinking, and they were all minors, but they had been responsible and gotten a DD. For some reason they were pulled over. He said, I smell alcohol, have you guys been drinking? Obviously at that point you should just be honest. You should just say, no officer, I'm not drinking, but my friends, that's probably who you're smelling. We were at a party and I'm driving them home. Then the cop pulled them out of the car and gave the other 3 minors when he could have just sent them on their way.
The first time I had sex, I was ashamed to tell all of my friends, and I even had a friend tell me she would be really mad at me if she found out I wasn't a virgin. And then one day that I did have the courage to tell one of my friends, she also was carrying that secret around.
We had someone who used to be an undercover DEA agent come and speak to our entire high school. He asked everyone in the audience to raise their hand if they themselves or someone they knew had taken magic mushrooms. And people raised their hands. And then he asked, now how many of you or the person you knew threw up after you ingested those mushrooms? And everyone's hand went down. And the first thing he said is, well, those mushrooms weren't real. They were fake mushrooms, because real mushrooms, you throw up after you ingest them, no matter what quantity you throw up. And after he said that, everything just kind of went to scare tactics.
At the city panel they held last year, there was a comment made that there are no casual drug users. That if you were to casually drink or use marijuana, then you automatically are going to become addicted to harder drugs. You can't sustain a casual marijuana use lifestyle. It's not possible. And I looked around the room that day at the Empire, and I just couldn't believe that nobody was there to, raise their hand and say well, that's not right. And then I looked at myself, and I didn't raise my hand either. And I could have said all kinds of things.
Sophomore year, new to the English department, and I met this girl, Steph, bright red hair, and just had been through a lot. It was new because she talked about mental illness so openly, and I loved that, but it also terrified me. I kind of wanted to shy away from it, but I kept gravitating toward her because I wanted that. And then she asked me after a couple months, hey, let's make these tank tops that say, I have a mental illness, and wear them to class. And I was terrified. I didn't do it, and I wish that I would have.
I was missing the family occasion of Christmas Eve. I couldn't be there. I wasn't there. I was out running around doing meth. And I remember thinking that I had no one I could tell. Who else can you tell? Can you really tell your family members or your closest friends that you've been doing meth? I mean, how can you turn to someone like that? There's such an enormous stigma. It's an embarrassing thing to admit. Honestly, there's embarrassment, and then there's the risk of being shunned from your friends and family. I mean, even my closest friends that I'd grown up with, I'd been friends with them from 5 years old all the way until I was 21, 22. I didn't feel safe telling them.
So I was like, okay, I gotta go to treatment now. But then when I actually went to treatment, I was like, but maybe I don't want to go to treatment. And they had to force me to go in because I didn't want to, spend a month or two in treatment. But then once you get in there and you're removed from the situation that you're in, which is just this perpetual cycle of drinking and, having emotional and psychological issues as a consequence of drinking, and then drinking more because of those, and it just starts happening. You're able to sort of like step back, and you're in an environment in which like why you're there. You know that you're there because you have an issue, and you can't really, there's no way to turn it into something that you can just ignore. When you're not able to go back and do it, you have to look at it.
We were across the street from the park, U Park, and we had a band at the time, and we played on our back porch to random college kids. The cops descended upon us and wrote everyone that said they were from the house a $200 noisy party violation for playing some music. The neighbors were all okay with it. One of them might not have been, but we don't really know that because the police don't have to tell you who called. They can just say, someone called in and you were being loud, so now we're gonna write you up. You can't talk to your neighbor because they don't tell you which neighbor has a problem with it.
I didn't even get how to deal with my period in a proper sense. Then I felt even more like, I guess, stigma, because it's coming from all levels of support. My mom just gave me panty liners, and panty liners don't even help collect the menstrual cycle. It's just to collect leaks. So I was just doing it wrong. And I didn't understand that cramps were like I would get these awful pains before I'd get my period, and I had no idea that it was related, that the pain I'd feel was directly connected, my body saying like, you're gonna get your period soon. No idea. I didn't know what I was doing.
I wish there were a different way to speak to the students about this, because I adamantly remember everyone walking out of that gymnasium and just making fun of them, saying like, wow, what a crackpot. Why couldn't you have told us real information? Why did you have to make it so scary? Because at that point, people are junior, senior in high school. Most people have at least tried to smoke pot, and whether they succeeded or not. Because at that point, everyone had gone through the DARE program. Most people had, known that the things that we've been told by the school resource officer were debunked or were fake or were very sensationalist. And I think that if we had the real drug conversation, it might have helped. Because there were people that overdosed, like I had claimed when I was in high school, but there were also people that had very significant drug problems that weren't really talked about. The addictions portion of drugs wasn't really talked about. It was drugs are bad, and that was it. I never really saw a resource to turn to if you had an addiction problem in high school. And even in college, I don't see a lot of it. It's don't take drugs because you're going to die at some point, and that's kind of where it stops. And I really hope that that changes.
I first smoked marijuana in high school. After I had drunk with my friends first before we ever smoked. Part of the gateway theory idea involves you try marijuana and you become addicted to these harder things. But the problem with leaving that assumption the way it is that when kids in high school try marijuana for the first time, and they suddenly truly feel like they were either, what the information they were told growing up was either wrong or it was purposefully misleading about the dangers of, say, marijuana. And when they feel that they were lied to, then they don't believe anything else they heard growing up in health class either. And we heard a lot of really important things in health class. It takes all the credibility out of what they were told growing up.
I had struggles with eating disorders as well in high school and college. All the things that we struggle with personally, we then notice. And I did see that they're very prevalent at UND. you know, you notice things in the dining centers and in the bathrooms that you probably wouldn't if you hadn't struggled yourself. And I felt like I couldn't say anything because I still carry some of that shame, and it's hard to approach someone else. And nobody had really taught me how to do that. So I don't know if it's our teachers' jobs to talk about that in class, but I wish there was more information.
You know, these closest friends, I moved in with them. They were so supportive in my life. I'm so grateful to have had that support network. Come up here, come to Grand Forks, move in with us, go to school, get started, get your life on track. So I moved up here. I moved up to Grand Forks. I moved in with them, and that was the greatest decision of my life. When I first got here, and I was still sort of in this mindset of being sort of on the outskirts of society, I still felt not quite welcome, and I think part of that was because most of my identity was tied to drugs and drug usage.
My name is Walter. I'm from Grand Forks, and I'm an alcoholic. Don't do the weakest.
Yes.
The weakest.
My name is Luke Hoffland. I am a real human being, and I went to college at UND in Grand Forks, North Dakota. And it was super fun.
My name is Lizzie. I'm from Grand Forks, North Dakota. And I hope through this discussion that I'm having with the camera right now, I hope that we can end the stigma of female sexuality and talk to young women.
My name's Tim Dusick. I was born and raised in Grand Forks, and I really don't want to see any more of the people that I know die from drugs.
My name is Will. Ever since senior year of high school, I've been an intermittent, sometimes regular marijuana user. And despite what I was told growing up about what that means for my prospects in life, I've graduated from UND last year.
Well, my name is Marie Munson, and I lived in Grand Forks for about 4 years. Yeah, I've smoked pot more times than I can count. I've been able to do that and graduate with honors and get an internship, apply to grad school, work at a law firm for 2 years, enjoy music, and write and get in touch with my own creativity in a healthy way.
Yeah, my name is Cal Datz. I was born in Philadelphia. I lived in New York, Montana, moved to Bismarck. Bismarck is where I started getting in trouble. I got sent to a boarding school in Georgia. I lived some time in Georgia, and moved back to Bismarck, and now I'm here in Grand Forks. I'm a psychology major with minor in chemical dependency, and I am excited and honored to be here.
But I always drank differently than other people. I recognize that like pretty quickly about myself. Like I would drink a lot more than other people. I would black out faster than most people. I was embarrassed for a while that I couldn't, people say you can't hold your liquor. Like, you don't want to admit that.
The guy that lived above us, I don't know if he liked us very much, but it was thin walls in the apartment, but so we tried to be his friend. We were playing acoustic guitars in the living room, and he called us in to the cops, and they showed up and they were like, well, you have 2 or more people sitting in a house, and I can hear you from when I enter your building. I can technically write you a violation right now, and I don't have to tell you who called you in, but it was like -20 outside, and nobody was able to hear us except Doug. He was the man upstairs. Obviously, he didn't feel comfortable coming and talking to us if he had an issue, We thought we're being entirely reasonable, we're playing light music on Saturday afternoon, so. And we called into the police station and said it all could have been resolved had our neighbor just come and talk to us. But the cops ended up not coming over anymore because because they, I don't know, maybe thought we were right.
I think my shame is intrinsically linked to my religious upbringing and going to a Catholic elementary school, and like the Catholic guilt still haunts me sometimes. Not putting it all the blame in that direction, but I remember once it was called CCD every Wednesday. Once I left the Catholic school and went into public schooling, they were trying to teach us about STDs and how easy it is to contract one and also to become pregnant. And what they did is they put a volleyball net up in the gym, and then they started throwing ping pong balls, and they're like, for every ping pong ball that goes through the volleyball net, that's your chances of getting an STD and getting pregnant. So that probably was a visual that stuck with me for a long period of time, because that was very inaccurate. They're like, the volleyball net's a condom, and then these. So like, even talking about safe, like wearing a condom, like you can still get pregnant, and that is true. You still can, and you can still get an STD, but not quite as frequently as a ping pong ball going through a volleyball net. And I think it was a scare tactic or to promote abstinence.
There was a documentary that really turned me on to these substance testing kits. It was called What's in My Baggie. And it was these guys from a company called the Bunk Police. And what the Bunk Police do is they make these kits. And they went all around to different festivals in the United States. And they had talked with people and said, hey, can we test your drugs? You know, I see you have something. Can I see what it is? Can I test it? And I'll just tell you, give it back to you. We're not police, anything like that. And majority of people had bath salts. Some people seem to know what they're talking about. Some people have been around the block more than a few times with that kind of stuff. But they linked this documentary, and it was really interesting, seeing the reactions of people who had bought thousands of dollars of what they thought was MDMA, and it turns out to be bath salts.
Last year at the city's panel, this UND Psychedelic Club was there, and they were asking questions, and we caught this moment where they asked a question, they kind of got yelled at, then they kind of lashed out, and then the whole crowd at the Empire is laughing at the Psychedelic Club member who asked a question at the end of it. And we all felt like this went really poorly, that we are doing a very bad job at connecting with people from the city. That video we made won us 2 free trips to Washington, D.C., where we spoke at these conferences at the Museum Institute about what the UND Psychedelic Club is doing and about trying to bring all these perspectives together. And we got validation that our voice was worth hearing.
So there's something about North Dakota that at least made me feel like, as a tall female, it was hard to wear heels without somebody saying, either I'm a sorority girl or I have some event, like I need an excuse to dress up. I don't need permission to talk about my life experience unless I'm forcing it on someone or hurting somebody. You know, I don't think that's okay, but I think sometimes we need a little push, and that's okay, because I've had anxiety and depression since I was a junior in high school. My dad always says that we compare our insides to everyone's button-up outsides, and that's not fair. And so there we all take our coats off at the door and sit in a circle and talk about what's going on.
Here I am, at this recent event at the Empire. I felt so welcomed. I feel today, I feel so welcomed in Grand Forks. I feel like there's a community of harm reduction people and doctors and city officials and people with grant money that is coming from the governor and the mayor and academics and stuff like that. Everybody's pulling together. Like the stigma, like we're making a difference, and the stigma is sort of turning a little bit.
Once people are ready to accept that it is a necessity, and I think that's close. But unless you have like a group of people or a community of your own where it's okay to be open about it, you don't want to let anybody else into that bubble.
I did underage drink in college, and but I was educated about it because my parents communicated with me in a open sort of way, not saying just don't drink, it's terrible for you. They said if you ever need a ride, give us a call, because it might happen.
Now that I have a niece, like that little girl, like she's gonna know the ins and outs, and I'm gonna tell her, ideally you don't want your kids having sex, but at the end of the day you can't make those choices for them. They make those choices for themselves. So in the event that they do, and try to make it as non-judgmental as possible.
My college professor, Frank White, he travels to different elementary schools, middle schools, and high schools and discusses drugs with them and tries to relate to them as much as possible. The big one right now that he was traveling and talking about last semester with was codeine, promethazine, cough syrup. Asked me to find him relevant hip-hop lyrics from top 100 songs of, these people. No.
Fast forward to this year, the president of the Psychedelic Club is invited to be on the panel at the city's film screening. And not only that, but at one point he is interrupted by applause from the whole crowd at the Empire when he mentioned that he was graduating UND, and it's clear that we're all trying to find common ground now. And that's super important. We have to keep focusing on that, I think.
The more I read about radical self-acceptance, the more I realize we can't judge ourselves for needing permission or for not making the tank top. But we can be mindful and look at that and say, okay, so how do I move forward, and keep that in mind and tell other people, I wish I would have done it, or here's what I'm gonna do next.
As I got into school, I started gaining knowledge and seeing myself succeed in other ways. I was able to gain my confidence back and find myself in a different position in which my identity was no longer solely related to drugs, the stigmatized topic of drugs.
Maybe more faces coming into the light will get people to understand that this is not a dead end. There are still more solutions that we can think up, and more hands and energies we have to put into it that can make them happen. That's why we need to speak up about these things and talk more sincerely about these things, because I think we'll be very surprised how many people might raise their hand next time you ask a big room full of people how many of them are casual substance users. And the important part is how many more ideas will suddenly appear on the table when the stigma reveals them as valid. And I think we'll be amazed, and I think we'll be hopeful, and I think we'll have a chance. Skanama-nama-nama. We just watched it.
Cut one.
Cut.
Bang bang.
Cut. That was the video. What do you guys think?
I really liked it a lot. It's not very often, especially today's world of social media, that you see some content that actually kind of means something nowadays. And so it was kind of special having, just like watching something and really kind of having it pull you in. I would honestly recommend everyone I know to kind of give it a watch.
Yeah.
And that's not just a plug. That's like that's sincere. So
it was so honest.
Yeah.
I think there was something honest about it. And I also liked, I knew you were working on this video, but I didn't realize you were going to include an array of stigmatized topics. Like there was sexuality involved and drugs. There was a variety of stigmatized topics. I thought that was really awesome.
Yeah, not just like the black box of like usually harm reduction focuses. I would say more on like the substance kind of world a little more, because that's a lot of direct kind of harm from that. But I liked how it was kind of every kind of shied away topic that most of, especially around here in Grand Forks and Upper Midwest, a lot of the topics that, if you kind of bring them to your friends or your parents, a lot of times you kind of just get cricket sounds. You don't really get much in the form of information.
Yeah. There were even things about like mental health in there. One of the ladies was covering mental health. And that's something like, I always tend to focus because of my past history and being the president of the Psychedelic Club and the SSDP, I tend to relate harm reduction and stigma to drugs only. But, this video kind of touched on everything. And that was really good because stigma in general is what we need to address.
It's like the enemy of information.
Yeah, totally.
It surprised me when we were putting it together, realizing that each person I thought about interviewing had a very different stigma story that didn't quite cross over to the other flavors of it, the other genres of stigma. Both Luke and Walter were talking about alcohol-related things, but Walter's story is. I guess Luke was also talking about his noisy party violations.
Walter's was a lot more of like a personal inside kind of battle he faced, and was it Luke? Luke's was a lot more of like a battle he faced with others around him, where it sounded like he didn't really himself have a problem with, in this example, alcohol, but it was the effect of like the community around him rather than Walter's was an internal struggle
with alcohol itself.
And both were stigmas as well. Yeah. So
realizing that there are these different kinds of stigma, not just, marijuana use is one just small thing that could be stigma. Yeah, sex, how's that for an important one?
When she when she was talking about the
volleyball
net and the ping pongs, I related to that. I didn't get that exact visual when I was growing up, but I related to that so hard. Like growing up in middle school, especially sex ed class, they did a pretty good job, but there's definitely a few topics that they did that kind of sensationalist kind of approach.
Gosh, when I heard her telling that story, I thought to myself like, oh my goodness, stop that. How destructive. What a destructive thing to tell people. Like the volleyball net represents a condom and the ping pong balls represent the ability for, STDs.
Yeah, the chance that you'd catch something or something.
Yeah, and as if a condom is totally ineffective and there's no resource, there's no option for safety.
It reminded me of that show, movie Mean Girls, when the gym teacher's talking to all the girls in the high school and is like, if you have sex, you will get an STD and you will die. And it's like they were making fun of it, but there's a reason they made fun of that, because like a lot of times that's actually what people are, given as information.
Yeah, I thought it was really good. It was really good, man. The way things were like clipped together, it turned out to be very concise, very entertaining as well, that it was clipping from person to person, but still following a coherent story. It seemed like it was really awesome.
Okay, I'm glad you felt that it seemed that way because, the editor in me is constantly saying, you gotta shorten it, you gotta shorten it, you gotta shorten it. Every sequence could be way shortened and probably more entertaining, but I guess I wanted to make this long cut first, and usually I kind of do it that way. It's like, if I had all the time in the world and I did not care to milk a scene or two or every scene, how would I prefer to make it? Like, just so I know that everything would be included in one cut, and that's what this is. So we could cut this up and share it in a million different ways, shorter ways.
As someone that has never seen this, and I've heard about it, and I've maybe seen a tiny segment of one interview, maybe. Seeing the final product here, I found myself wanting to hear more.
I thought it was short enough, yeah.
I wanted to almost hear more stories. I wanted it which maybe that's kind of the point you were going for, which you want it to like have people itch for more, more speech or more talking points, more discussion. And like I want to hear people's experiences more, and it like, especially the way how you start off with everything really hidden, really kind of like the music even kind of emotionally kind of made me feel almost like not scared, but a little like down a little bit. And then in the second half, when you switched it over, it was a lot more hopeful, upbeat, and it made me want to want to hear more of that. It made me feel good just hearing that, you know?
And it was accompanied by that cool visual effect that represents stigma.
Yeah. So which half was more entertaining? The half where you couldn't see their faces, or the half where you could?
I wouldn't say more entertaining, because both were. It's almost like, you know, you can't tell what's hot if you don't know what's cold. So you have to have both aspects to really, you know, get the importance of each, really, you know, feel the scope of it. You know, if you just had the second half, you know, it would just be one of those, like, you know, it'd be happy, but it wouldn't be quite as much of a difference. And I feel like that difference is what made it really click for me.
Maybe in my mind it's really long, but also if I didn't have the visual change, then it would be way too long in my mind, because it would all look the same. It would just be cutting back to all these faces. We've already seen them, you know, over and over and over, and probably get too long. The first half to me is interesting because I've never seen anything like that before, and I'm just like, whoa. and then the second half, it's like, it's them, only it's interesting again because I can actually see their faces and I have something else to compare it to. If it was more of the same, either their faces or the blobs, it would begin, I think, to bore me or something. So
my favorite part is after the blobs, the clear section.
Capital B blobs.
Blobs. The clear section started off each clip of each interviewee with stating, you know, their name, how long they've been here. It really kind of, it went from being a very kind of impersonal, like, you know, oh, this is just kind of another, like, you know, they're telling the information kind of video, to another one that really took me from kind of a generality of, like, stigma to shot me right into, this is Grand Forks.
Yeah.
It was
almost like character development. The way it was like, oh, who are these people behind this blurry mess of stigma? And then, you know, all of a sudden you're like, oh, I know now I can see who that is. Now I can relate to that person. And that's the character.
Yeah, and as someone who's kind of lived in Grand Forks as well my whole life, knowing who some of the people were before they were revealed, it almost was, I don't know how to explain it, but it almost was really cool seeing their faces appear afterwards, because it's almost like, you know, when they're blurred out and you know who it is, it's like, oh, they don't even care, they don't want to tell anyone their actual story. And then as soon as, like, their faces actually appeared, it almost made you, like, feel happy for them and feel good for them that, like, you know, we're at a place now where, like, people are starting to become open to share their stories, share their personal, like, experiences without, you know, not just stay in the shadows or whatnot. So that really stood out to me as well.
It's weird to see my own face on the screen, and you can relate to that, Cal. But I guess it's weirder for me too, because I had to spend all the time putting all this together and you know, staring at my own face over and over again, and like cutting it just like I cut everybody else's shots. And but it's weird, and you know, I felt also embarrassed because at the very end, it's basically a lecture from me. I just like leave this me at the end, you know, that doesn't quite feel right. But at the same time, I guess I don't know.
I would say as well, though, the content that you were kind of expressing at the end there, it did a really nice job of kind of like finishing it up and kind of ending it on a real positive note.
It's a good summary, I think. And yeah, I mean, I feel like it's only right that you're the one at the end summarizing. I think maybe you're thinking that because you know that you are the editor and the creator, and
but even so, as the person who's kind of created all this and brought all these ideas together, you of all the people in the video would have the kind of the largest scope over the whole idea. So I mean,
you met them all, you interacted with them all, and then summarize it all.
And I mean, no one's gonna know that. Well, actually, they will know because your name's on it. You made it, and so never mind what I just said. But I mean, like, it kind of does a nice job. It's almost like at the end of a movie, if the director has his like little comment that kind of wraps it all together.
At the end of a news video I would make in a sincere setting, I would probably have some kind of voiceover summarizing everything if there wasn't another source of audio to do it perfectly. So this sort of, I guess, is in place of a voiceover that I might use to summarize it as part of the interview footage. I guess it's okay.
I like it though because it keeps it real personal. you know, having just a random voiceover, even if it is your own voice, seeing you say it personally, it keeps it more of like almost like a conversation itself. The video is a conversation.
Okay, actually, yeah, I realized that when I decided to leave this shot in here for now, I had the same feeling that I had when I was in high school making some of these videos. One time I made a video called The Maunder Cycle, which refers to the 11-year cycle of how the sunspots rotate around the sun, something. I made a video about 2011. I was really into the number 11, and my friends and I like ran around, and I filmed myself for 3 days leading up to it. We made this funny sort of video, philosophical little video. And at the end, I put in this like really heartfelt, deep, but it was so real, you know, like I felt it. And I was like, I'm going to be embarrassed if I put this in the video, but I feel like I must do it for myself. And I did it. And I was embarrassed of it later, but then I was still proud of it, and I still am. And I had this feeling when I was about to cut it out. I was like, it's like I got flashbacks back to that making that video, and I thought, oh no, I'm gonna let myself down if I don't include this, because I feel like I want to, you know. I feel like it'd feel good, even though it is a little self-indulgent.
I mean,
maybe,
but you overcame your own stigma.
Yeah, dude. Exactly. Wow. See, now I have to leave it in.
Yeah, you gotta. I'll be upset with you if you take that out. Yeah, like I said, I still go back to it. I think everyone in Grand Forks or anywhere I think they should see this.
It's very captivating.
Even if you completely disagree with every single point anyone makes in the whole video, just the fact that it opens up the conversation about it and allows people to like have that conversation in itself, you know, that not just fixes problems, but it presents the opportunity to fix problems and gets people, you know, excited to like I mean, honestly, after watching it, it made me excited to go out and share with people a little more personally, and excited to like change the stigmas around us. So, and I feel like I imagine that's kind of the point of the whole video. Succeeded, ballpark, home run.
Yeah, there's that one point in the video where on that panel, that city event, the panel is saying, you know, like, there is no casual drug user, there is no casual marijuana user, and nobody raised their hand. And hearing that, I don't know, it made me feel like, oh, I should raise my hand. You know, people should raise their hand. It made me wonder. It made me look at the audience and be like, there must be people in that audience who are thinking to themselves like, oh, well, I don't want to raise my hand, but I should. I feel like I should, but I'm not going to. You know, there's people in that audience surely that were thinking that.
I was thinking that, and that's what I had to realize later. And it's so amazing how casually I let the stigma win, you know. It didn't bother me for all that long, really. It was only until later when I was thinking about this interview, when we were doing this, what to say, and it occurred to me that was really significant, how I just didn't raise my hand when I should have, you know. And why did that not even cross my mind as a bigger problem sooner? And maybe it's a lot of people are used to justifying not speaking up because, you know, it's dangerous to do so.
Yeah, it's easier. It's almost like the path of least resistance to just kind of sit.
There's something to say about just the culture where you live as well. Up here in the Midwest, I think you boys would agree, most people, when it comes to very personal subjects, is you don't talk about it, you keep it to yourself, you push it down, and you never let it show. And I feel like that's something that's kind of pretty common around this area.
Yeah, stoicism. There's definitely like stoicism here, for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah. There's like a stigma around expressing yourself almost here, even.
Yeah, like you don't want to. Something about, and even, you know, in my choir even, there's people that, you know, express their opinion that up here in the Midwest, everyone thinks the same, everyone has the same ideals, everyone is the same, and I mean, that comes from the fact that no one really generally wants to stand out for the most part, it seems like, or at least in the past, that's kind of what it's been, you know, you don't want to be the person that everyone looks at around here.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas like in a lot of other big cities and stuff, that's all about individualism, or I did not say that right at all. Individualism.
Yeah, there you go.
But like, you know, I feel like this video is a nice thing to tell people, you know, even in your own city here in Grand Forks, where, you know, it's not a big city at all. Everyone is their own person, and it's okay if you are different from your neighbor, and we should celebrate those differences.
Yeah, because they will help us. They will benefit from those differences. We'll have more ideas. We'll have more. Yeah, blah blah blah. All that stuff I said at the end.
Pretty much.
Yeah. One of the things I'm super excited about that you mentioned about this video is that the city and the Grand Forks Public Health Department is in support of your production of this video.
Yeah, dude. They paid my gas to go to Minneapolis. The weekend I got a bunch of this interview footage with some of my G-Funker friends who now live in the cities. They were supporting me to get down there to attend a training at the syringe exchange program in Minneapolis that I was at. And while I was there, I was also doing this. And yeah, they're gonna help us share the video. They want to get like the police department and all these other groups' Facebook pages to share our video. You know, I was like,
That is so
wouldn't that be really, really awesome if the police department shared a video we made?
City people
Yeah,
want to like
they're trying to
break
support
down
us.
stigma.
Not
Yeah,
even
support
that.
you
Not
and
even
support
that.
us.
The Grand Forks Police Department, if they showed a video like this where there's people openly saying, "Yeah, I smoke weed," and the police is like, you know, we accept that people do this, and we're here to help and to fix the situation rather than just that general traditional role of drugs are bad, don't do drugs. It just shows, and it honestly, for me, it makes me a lot more confident in our local law enforcement. It makes me want to believe in them a lot more, and it makes me want to respect them more. And I think, in all, if your city respects your police / city officials, everyone benefits and everyone is happy, and that's how you get a nice, happy community.
Yeah.
How great is that?
Now, I don't know if they will, you know, because they have to watch it. I wonder who it is that watches it and decides, you know, would the police ever share this?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. You know, I hope the people that wanted us to make this like it, and I guess, yeah.
If they don't like it, I would be very, very interested to know what they don't like, and I would be very, very proactive in fixing what they don't like, or at least informing them, or maybe persuading them. If not, you as the creator of the video, you know, you have a lot more personal bias into maybe wanting it to be kind of fulfilled, but maybe as someone that's just watched it, or other people in the community that, you know, support the video, and if we show our support to the people that sponsor this, give them confidence to like actually go through with it, even if like maybe they're not 100% on it. So like, you know, who's Michael Dulitz, you said, is the guy who's kind of you were collaborating with, you know, if we can show him that like a lot of people that have seen this or know of this are in support of it, it maybe gives him the confidence to like really bring it to whoever's in charge of all this stuff. But like,
you know, they've already taken a chance on us with all the support they've given us. And, you know, previous to this, the city paid me to run the soundboard at that event at the Empire that you volunteered to speak at.
Right.
You know, that was, they took a chance on us then, and that turned out really well. They took a chance on, sending me to Minneapolis to get this footage and to do this. So, I wanna find more ways to also feel like I'm trusting them. I mean, I've never before dreamed of having the police department share one of my videos. You know, in the beginning, you imagined, I don't know, something very different.
It probably puts them in a little bit of a strange situation because there's stigma for them. They've done things a certain way all along, and it's. You worded it as a risk, or people are taking a risk on like supporting us or investing in us and investing in this sort of harm reduction orientation and these videos and stuff. And it sort of is a risk because it's a challenge. It is not the path of least resistance. It's a path of change. It is, in the end, would likely lead to the path of least resistance. But, you know, to get there, you have to move the Tetris blocks to the right spot. You have to put forth the effort to line things up the right way. And I think that's what makes it a strange, tricky situation, a challenge and a risk all at the same time, is that.
And you mentioned that stigma that even the police face, because I believe everyone has experienced stigma in some way. And the police itself, I mean, just my observations of in this current day and age, you know, if you look back, for anyone who's ever seen, you know, the Andy Griffith Show, the police officers in that were friends with everyone in the community, and everyone loved them, and everything was happy. And, you know, they were there to help and protect the people. And I feel like there's a stigma nowadays where police officers are feared. People don't like seeing them. Like, me personally, when I'm driving around or if I'm walking around and if I see a police, I don't instantly think, you know, thank you for keeping me safe. I have like an anxiety that starts. And, you know, just even having, in this case, the GFPD or anyone, you know, support something like this, even if they don't agree with it, but at least support the idea of talking about it, builds my confidence and starts to turn the opinion that, you know, these people are here to help us and protect us rather than instill fear. And that is a very important distinction that, if it does the prior, as in build confidence and trust, I think, like I said earlier, overall that builds a healthy, happy community. So
I've always assumed that all the police and everything to do with the police was totally on board with the complete prohibition of everything, right? And of the very extreme just say no stance. I assumed that was always the case, but why do I assume that? You know, maybe that is something that is building a false stigma on officers who, yeah, I mean, we just learned about that group, Law Enforcement Action Partnership. It used to be called Law Enforcement Against Prohibition. It is a huge group of law enforcement community members who, are against the war on drugs and prohibition and certain things that, you know, basically we're asking, harm reduction things. And so why did I assume, you know, let's give the police and the city a chance to share something like this, because maybe they aren't so hard line as we always thought, you know?
Yeah, that was eye-opening for me, that at the SSTP conference, the Law Enforcement's Against Prohibition, that was really eye-opening. It made me, it's funny you mentioned that, like, you get anxiety from the police. I sometimes do as well, but at the same time, there's also that sense of security from them, of course. And seeing that presenter at the SSDP conference reminded me of the humanity within law enforcement as well. Like, you know, these are people doing their jobs, and they all hold different stances when it comes to the war on drugs.
And different biases.
Yeah, different biases, different ideals and stuff like that. And it reminded me of the humanity within everything. It reminded me of the humanity, again, especially within law enforcement, and that, you know, probably they really are there to protect us, and they're just kind of, they have rules to follow and stuff. And so that'll be interesting. I'm interested to see, like, the response, what their response will be to sharing this video. That'd be great if they considered to, you know, go down this path with us.
Even if they don't, you know, fully are on board, but as long as, you know, they show cooperation, I'll call it, or, you know, I can't think of the word.
They could support our attempt
collaboration
to bring them closer together with us.
or at least, you know, not just shooting it down instantly, but, like, at least giving it a chance. It just shows that, you know, although they do have their rules to follow, and currently, you know, laws are the way they are, they at least are open-minded into the opinions of the people they protect. And that is very important, in my opinion, as well.
I would find it so cool if, you know, if you sit through this whole video and at the end it says, like, brought to you by, you know, the city of Grand Forks and the police department, and all these people be like, are you kidding me? That's awesome. I mean, it would instantly make me second guess everything I thought I knew about those groups. You know, if I had some wrong assumptions or I had some bad feelings about these groups, and then I saw this, I would have to at least rethink, like, wow, maybe they aren't so bad if they made this.
Which Tim, in the video, Tim discusses the fact that, you know, when a lot of us grow up with the ideology we're taught on drugs specifically, and we find out it's true, and we lose all our confidence in, you know, the authoritarian position around us, or the authority, and something like this, where if it was, like, you know, endorsed by the Grand Forks City Council or Grand Forks Drug Task Force, or even like the GFPD, you know, it rebuilds that confidence in that group, and it reminds you that, you know, maybe 20 years ago or 15 years ago when you were taught this, they thought that, but, you know, they changed their minds too. They're open to change, and it rebuilds that confidence that, you know, maybe what they are saying is true. Maybe, you know, like anyone, you can have a wrong idea, but they're showing that they changed their ideas. They're adapting to, like, the current situation, and it really makes you kind of buy back into the system a little more. And that is, I feel, like a very, very significant factor in harm reduction in our community.
It is. It creates engagement between law enforcement and the community members, and between the city officials of Grand Forks and the community members. It creates an engagement, a dialogue, almost as if, because I think we represent a fair amount of people. We don't represent only ourselves. I mean, there are other people who kind of line up with what we are saying here. Within Grand Forks, there are people within Grand Forks that line up with what we're saying, and, you know, to have that engagement back and forth with the city and the police is very good. It's like we're having a huge community engagement, and it'll be so great to just create a bigger dialogue.
And I would be surprised if even one single person in the entire community, greater Grand Forks area, if they were to watch this video, I would be very surprised if they didn't relate to at least one aspect of this video, because it, like we were talking about earlier, it literally touches almost every kind of aspect of anyone's life in general. Like,
these law enforcement people will have family members and stuff as well that have these situations.
The way I want to make it bigger, what could be cooler than this, you know? Well, I would really, really like to interview local high school and middle school and elementary school kids about drugs, and include some of these reveal videos with students like that. I think would be pretty intense and sweet, and since could be done really well if you knew how. And then also a bunch of, like, G-Funk celebrity people. Like, what if it was blurred out blob faces, only voices that you almost thought you recognized, and then when they reveal, it's like, oh wow, that's, you know, Terry Doolum or whatever.
That'd be good.
People that G-Funkers all know, who also have stigma stories. Who'd have thunk, you know, these people you thought were gods or something.
Yeah,
perfect.
Turn out they're just
society
G-Funkers, like these, you know, college friends of mine, and maybe like these high school kids we could find, and
you know,
pretty sweet.
The thing about that is, if you were able to, you know, interview high schoolers or younger kids, that is a very powerful tool for. We were talking earlier about Michael Dulitz. You know, he goes around to middle schools, elementary schools, and we were talking earlier about how. Well, I don't know if
Frank White.
Yeah, Frank White. Actually, sorry, that's my bad.
Right.
But we were talking about, I don't know if that was during this recording, but we were talking about how he goes to these schools and he tries to connect with kids on a level. But the best way to connect with kids is to present them stories from kids their own age. And so if there's, like, kids in high school or middle school that, you know, see these blurred out faces and they hear the voices and the voices sound like they're, you know, their own age, and they're like, what is this? And all of a sudden, you know, it pops up and it's like, it is a kid their own age. And they go, wow, you know, that's like me. I can see myself there now. And it's not just like a guy that's 40 years old telling them, like, oh, you know, these kind of things aren't good. But, like, you know, if it's a kid your own age saying, like, you know, I did this, I'm good, we're better, you know. It makes you think, you know, it helps to have the conversation with yourself.
Yeah.
So, like,
it would be really cool then to to get, say 3 kids from a certain class in Red River, interview ahead of time, and then screen this video at like a pep rally or something, or maybe a different sort of setting, but for the students, and there are kids in the class who are watching it, who are in it, and but they're blurred out in the beginning, and then it's like, what if you had a sampling of like all of the different friend groups in one high school class, like interviewed in one video like this? It could be pretty wild to see that. Wow, everybody in our little microcosm of a world here, in all our little communities, are just normal people too, with the same worries about stigma.
In the video, I don't remember what her name was, but she said that her dad told her about that. You have your own inner self, and all you see is the buttoned up versions of everyone else. The perfect, social media side of everyone.
That's so true.
Whereas, like, having a video that shows you that people from all walks of life, all around you, they're their own people. They experience all these things. And, maybe a lot of them experience things that in our society are considered really negative and really bad. And, it's possible that you can go through that and still be successful. It's not going to end your life. It's not, well, I shouldn't say that. In certain circumstances, God forbid, things go bad. But, like, a good example, let's say you decide you want to start smoking weed. You don't have to think that your life is just over if you talk to someone about that. You don't have to think that, as soon as you confess that, you smoke weed, that all opportunity is gone. It shows that even in that case, you can be successful, and it's all right to talk about it.
And seek help.
And seek help if you need it. I mean, even the video, a lot of the people admitted that, they were casual cannabis users, and they were very successful in themselves. And in that case, it just opens a conversation for, like, how maybe can we switch legislation or switch the community's opinion on things. But, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
People are scared to do that. People are scared to, like, speak up, because it's almost like it gives probable cause for punishment, probable cause for legal repercussions. It gives justification for family shunning, and that's the whole point of the documentary here.
Well, yeah, dude, and I have to bring it back. We talked about it the last 2 episodes in a row already, but those people we met at SSDP from the Philippines and from Iran, where they have death threats made at them. The guy from Iran had to flee the country because he was speaking up too much about drug laws, and people threatened to kill him. In the Philippines, 20,000 people have been murdered in like less than a year and a half, I think, and our friends are speaking up about it, even though people have been killed for doing that. And so here we are. What am I afraid of to not raise my hand in a room full of squares? Like I am so afraid to raise my hand. There's a lot at stake here, and I'm not going to raise my hand. Like, what if I have my younger cousins and stuff in school? Like, their lives are at stake here, because the community's making decisions on their behalf, and I'm not going to raise my hand because I'm afraid.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that I'm very grateful where I am in America, where we have the right to, freedom of speech and freedom of expression, well, healthy, positive expression, I would say, where I feel like a lot of people forget that almost, especially nowadays in society, where a lot of social media and other things, prevent people and get people scared to, like, speak their mind. It's a tool that we all have the right to, and it's a tool we need to utilize. And as soon as we utilize and get people used to that again, that's exactly why, well, I'm going to do a little plug here. That's exactly why I think America's a really nice country and one of the best.
Yeah.
It's just because you technically don't have to be afraid to share your opinion, where in the Philippines and other Iran, people are dying because they're doing that same thing.
Goodness. It's great that our biggest concern here right now in America is that the thing we're complaining about is that we're afraid to raise our hand because people will not like it. That we raise our hand that, people can be casual users. What a great position to be in. But nonetheless, that is the position we're in. So now we go forward with that.
And you can easily see how this could get worse. How to raise a hand in a situation like that means the man with the microphone points at you and the men with the guns drag you out back and end it right then. I mean, that's what's happening in the Philippines. Exactly that. And, just 2 years ago, they were like us. the people we met said that would never happen. And that's what we're saying here today. Well, that would never happen. But, just last year, when you listen to that crowd at the Empire laughing at the student who's trying to start a dialogue with the dude on stage, you hear that laughter, you connect with them, you feel that pain.
Yeah.
And even though, maybe it isn't death threats, I don't know, it's really strong and really significant in a world where you're not used to that. It's almost just as silencing.
Yeah, for sure. I was afraid. I knew the story. I knew that story, that had happened. He was laughed at for suggesting what he had suggested, and I agreed to go speak. But I was afraid. I was afraid that would happen, that I would be laughed at and shunned again. Once again, shunned.
I just had to include it in my interview. Saying what I love to say now. How do you go in 1 year from the psychedelic club being laughed out of there to the president being invited to speak on the panel and being interrupted by applause halfway through his thing? I just think it's so funny, and
that made me really happy for our community, and it shows just the positive progress that our community itself makes. Because even, like I said earlier, even if people don't agree with it, at least they're open to the idea of discussing it now. Yeah. At least, when the topic comes up that usually makes people uncomfortable and makes people laugh out loud at you, at least now people are open to it, and the dialogue is where things get fixed.
Yeah, I've heard you word it this way, Will, that you said, you are proud of our community and you're proud of our city officials and our law enforcement. You're proud of them. And I like the way you worded that, because it resonated with me. I am proud of them too. I am proud of us. I'm proud of all of us for doing what we're doing and doing this. It's like we're doing it together now. It's like we're finally kind of doing it together, all of us.
Yeah. I think this is what people have wanted all along.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. That's exactly, what you're thinking about watching the presidential debates. You're thinking about, who is going to do this with us, the people, who is going to represent the people, who is going to engage in that dialogue.
One thing I noticed at SSDP is people don't expect very much of us from North Dakota.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, wow, you have a club. That's amazing. It must be really hard for you there. Good work, good for you. And it's like, okay, yeah. It is good for us. And, okay, sometimes it is hard. Fine. But,
I saw that too. I totally saw that there.
That reminds me also, because I didn't personally go to this conference, but when I was younger, I went to the National Boy Scout Jamboree because I was a Boy Scout myself. And it was in Virginia, and there's kids from all over the country, even other countries there. And for the most part, the most often response I got to me saying that I was a Boy Scout in North Dakota is, number one, there's a North Dakota. And number two, so do you guys have covered wagons and live in igloos? And I'm not lying. Obviously the demographic was younger kids, so it was a little more outrageous. But a lot of people kind of disregard, the upper Midwest and North Dakota and smaller states, Iowa, any kind of smaller states where there's not a giant big city.
Yep. And here we are at the SSDP conference representing North Dakota as a positive change
role model.
Well, yeah, we're being role models. We're positively changing.
I would love to go to the next SSDP and when somebody says, oh, wow, North Dakota, wow. I want to say, yeah, and actually, look at this and show them that how many, I want to raise of hands, how many of your chapters have gotten the police department to partner with you on such a sincere sort of video?
Yeah.
I don't think any. I haven't seen them yet, so
you'd watch all these kind of haters' opinions change from kind of self-righteous to jealous, I would say.
I did see a lot of impressive things at SSDP. They were doing a lot of impressive things. Going back, though, to the way things are modeled all the time in every region of anything is a war. You're modeling things as a war. And here it feels like it's not taking that we're not following that model. We're modeling it as a community engagement, back and forth, a togetherness. And that was something. That's awesome. That's something I think that is awesome and unique.
To me, it feels like an experiment we're undergoing as a community right now because, yeah, my impression is that, I mean, just a year ago, I would classify my experience with this stuff as grim, you know, after last year, like getting laughed out of the place. And it's changed a lot already. So this feels like since then, somehow, yeah, we've been playing off the book, you know. We've been going against what Big Papa expected or something. It's like we're doing something we never thought we could ever even dare try.
And one of my capstone courses I'm taking at UND here, we discussed the idea of teamwork, and there's a bit large spectrum of teamwork, and a lot of times you think of maybe, you know, as the authority in Grand Forks that they compromise to, you know, help us out, or compromise to share these opinions. But I've learned that compromise is not winning even. Collaboration is where real success and progress is made. And I feel like this is a good opportunity to show not compromise, but collaboration. And collaboration is where you have the most positive success and where you find the most reward out of anything you do.
Interesting, yeah. Compromise is what happens in war. Collaboration is what happens in togetherness. I
Yeah,
guess,
like when people compromise, that means one person is, you know...
People are unhappy.
Most people are unhappy, but people are withholding what they truly want to go with what, you know, progresses forward, or so to say. But collaboration, both people achieve what they want, and they both work together. And I believe that a video like this, or even just a discussion, or even just the effort to have that there, is where you get everyone happy. From law enforcement all the way down to the common citizen. Collaboration is where everyone is happy in the end.
Yeah, even if so, the Grand Forks Public Health Department, especially Michael Dulitz, and everybody who's organized those events that we were involved in, they all deserve already the credit for putting into that. And for giving us all the chances we've had so far. Even if the maximum amount of immediate collaborative greatness that occurs between us and the, say, G-Funk Police Department in regards to this video is a simple share on Facebook from their account, I will be ecstatic, and I'll finally have a story to update the one I usually tell when I try to describe to those SSDPers what we're about, you know. It'll be great, saying how Cal got applauded once, but from that point on, it would be, we got the G-Funk Police Department to share a video we made, and we were both totally psyched, you know, and that'd be good for me.
It just builds the confidence that, you know, everyone in this whole community is all on the same page, and that's not, you know, I mean, personally, I have my own ideals about, in general, substances or any stigma, but it just shows that they're willing to help and willing to fix any problems and willing to, like, be present.
Totally.
To talk.
And not just be that stone-walled authority that, you know, people don't like to look at. And
absolutely. Like, people feel at war with the police around the country. And this is an absolute opportunity to not compromise, but to collaborate. This is an opportunity to collaborate with law enforcement and the city and the community members. Like, we ought to strive for a collaboration, you know, not a compromise. And I think that is what we're heading towards.
And it's a nice role model. If you can, you know, our little town of Grand Forks, in the grand scope of the whole country, if you use our city, you know, collaborating with the police, for example, or showing that, you know, we can all work together, and although, you know, obviously there's still going to be things that people don't like, in general, you know, we all work together. It's a role model that people can base their own communities, maybe some of their policies, or if not some of their practices or the way they handle subjects around. And, you know, that starts to have a domino effect. And you can start seeing that around the Midwest. And then eventually, I mean, this is the hope that it would kind of expand to the entire country itself, and all of a sudden, this huge bias most people have to police starts to cut down, and then instead of fear tactics and resorting to, sensationalism, we can get to people on a real level and actually solve problems in our society.
Maybe it makes a lot of sense that a new movement to get people like our age to respect the police more and to get the police to do the same would come from the Midwest, because we were just in Baltimore, and I was learning about how corrupt the Baltimore Police Department has been, or at least been accused of, and it's a huge institution where it's deeply known bogusness coming out of it, and so in a community like that. Well, I was there when the Johns Hopkins students held a protest against this new bill that's passing in Maryland, or that's being voted on, to allow universities to create new sorts of stronger police departments. And Hopkins came out in support of this. The students were protesting because they didn't want them to be partnering with the Baltimore Police Department on this, which is they were going to be. And so in a place like that, they've got, I should go to them and say, oh, you're from Hopkins? Wow, good for you. You must have made no progress, dealing with your police department. But here, we can really sit down and chat with our police people, and maybe we can be friendlier with them than you have the opportunity to be. And maybe they'd even share one of our funny videos.
And maybe
I do feel like we have good police.
And
I do feel that.
Yeah, I'm very grateful for where we're at. But if we have a successful collaboration like this, students from Johns Hopkins that are so upset with the situation, they can use the mold, they can use this kind of form they went with, and perhaps implement similar ideas or similar ways of making this communication. And that's the starting point. As long as you have a starting point like that, you can only go up from there.
Wouldn't it be amazing if UND was the example that our friends at Hopkins could show their university administration and say, look at them. North Dakota is on a better page with their police than we are. That's insane, is what they could say to their people.
Yeah, and that'd be just a driving force to make people desire to have that. And it would just be great. It'd be a wonderful world.
Yeah. Police sign on to uphold the law, protect citizens, and we as citizens, we need to have a relationship with the police. We need to have a positive relationship with one another. And that is something you don't see on Facebook. I don't see that on Facebook at all. I see a division. I see police against citizens. And that is not what it should be about. That is not what I feel. That is not what I want to feel.
As a person, you're either allowed to be pro-police or pro-protesters, but that's an unfair distinction to make. You can be pro both of those things, but we're not really given that option.
Right. And you gotta. This conversation alone has kind of reminded me that every single individual police officer is a citizen themselves. They're their own person. You can't just generalize an entire group of any kind. These protesters are going around saying, don't generalize usually it's minorities or people that are oppressed. But if you're going to say that, you should also say don't generalize any population.
Including police,
including anyone. Yeah. And the best way to prevent these generalizations and to prevent the stigma is to have these conversations, or to have these kind of videos that reminds people that, everyone is their own person. Everyone deals with these things. The one about the mental illness really kind of hit me a little bit because, just because you don't have a psychologist, prescribed mental illness does not mean that you haven't suffered from the effects, suffered from some, me personally, I would not say that I'm a depressed individual or an anxious individual, but there has definitely been times in my life, or especially in college, where I've experienced symptoms of both of these mental diseases. Does not necessarily mean I'm a depressed individual, like I said, but, if someone's experiencing something like this, kind of knowing that other people around you kind of have that same feeling, it gives you a sense of community. It gives you a sense that you're not alone, and that you can go to someone, you can talk to someone, and you're not going to be judged, and you can help yourself better.
Help yourself better. Yep.
That's some good English there, I think.
No. I mean, I really mean it. That's a good way to say it because, it's not just like we're asking for more money to fix my problems for me. These harm reduction things we're asking for aren't excessive gifts to lazy people. Welfare in that kind of sense. It's allowing everyone to help themselves.
Yeah, it's empowering people to be able to seek the help they want without, without being by yourself. And if you're by yourself with some of these problems, it just snowballs. And eventually you are very ostracized. I mean, you were telling me that when you first came here and in other places, you felt very on the outside of things.
Yeah.
And conversations like this and the ability just to talk about things, it keeps you in the loop. It keeps you in the community. So even though you're going through some difficult phase in your life or a difficult time, you don't have to feel so alone.
Yeah, it's like someone remembers I'm human, as somebody else worded it in the Stigma video you made. Luke,
Exactly.
I think. Luke said,
Oh,
he
he
said,
said, "I'm a real human."
I am human. I really am human.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And like any human, people make mistakes, but that should not define who they are.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad we're having this conversation. This is the point of what we do, to have this conversation.
Yeah, I feel like if everyone could have a conversation like this once a week, the world would be a better place.
Well, thank you both for coming over and having this one with me. And you gave me this reason to have a cut finished by tonight. I'm going to spend a little more time tonight polishing it up and going to send it to Dulitz. I'm having lunch with him tomorrow. And we're supposed to discuss the fate of the world and the fate of this video. So I feel
really
pretty good about
interested in kind of the outcome of that meeting, and if they're knowing how I could help.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, I have one. What about the Faces of Stigma for the video name? G-Funk Faces of Stigma or whatever?
Yeah, okay, that's probably better than voices, isn't it?
Because the face is blurry and then
You
see the face.
yeah, faces.
That might be good.
I kind of like that,
Faces
actually.
of Stigma. Yeah.
And
dude.
it does show, that term faces of stigma also refers to all the different kinds of ways stigma is
right.
formed.
Yeah, there you
Of
go.
course, and there's faces in the video, and they're blurred out at first. Dude,
There you go.
nice.
You got it.
Yes, your pal Cal
Faces of
for you.
Stigma.
Good work.
All right, nice.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Well, let's call it a night. This is the Harm Reduction Report.
Harm reduction.
Good night.
That's dope.
Sandbag on.